Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Today's episode, I have with me Kyle Bachus from Bachus and Schanker. Kyle, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you very much for having me. I'm a big fan of yours.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, one of the things that's interesting is this is real easy to do in the state of Colorado because I don't think there's a human on the planet in the state of Colorado that hasn't seen your face or your name somewhere around town. The reason that I kind of open it like this, on every billboard, on every bus, on every train, are you even on Are you on Frontier Airlines? Isn't there, there's like a raccoon and then there's you?
No, but there's an idea. Thank you.
Well, what's real fun about this is I knew the story that we're going to get into, also your book, Unthinkable. We're going to be telling that story, but you and I had a conversation before, and I didn't know the story myself. Tell us a little bit about your start of probably, I don't know the statistics, but I'm guessing you got to be the biggest or right at the biggest law firm here in Denver. So tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, so my law partner, Darren Schanker, and we were young lawyers. We were working at a small personal injury firm here in Denver. We kind of had big dreams, and we felt like we could build a better mousetrap, so to speak. And we felt like we could provide the kind of service that maybe wasn't the focus of the practice that we were at. So one night, Darren and I were out after we had recently had a small but very successful trial. And we were out at a place called the Cherry Cricket over in Cherry Creek. And it's an old bar. For those who don't know Denver, it's been around for a long time. And, we're talking about, hey, maybe we should go out on our own and start a practice. And so he and I decided that night, let's each go see how much equity we have in our houses, what sort of home equity loan we could get, because we didn't, between us, didn't have really more than $3,000 or $4,000 in the bank together. And so we were going to need a source to start this practice. So we agreed to go out, and we met back maybe, I don't know, whatever it takes, several weeks later. And Darren said, I've got $0 that they're willing to loan me against my home. And I said, well, they're willing to loan me $13,000. I can't remember the change, but about $13,000. And Darren and I decided that we would go ahead and open the practice. And with that $13,000, and we signed a piece of paper in handwriting, which I wish we still had, but we don't. And basically, he agreed in writing that if we went belly up on this idea, that he was going to owe me $7,000. And we used that money to start the practice. Now, the other reason that worked, and by the way, so Darren kept working, and I got paid $500 a month for the first 6 months after I quit my old job. And that was our agreement, $500 a month. Well, how can you live on $500 a month? Well, one of the things, I didn't grow up in a wealthy family, very middle class, but when I went to college, my dad bought in a really rundown area of Gainesville, Florida. I went to the University of Florida, bought a duplex, and he took me over to it. And he said, this is how you're paying for college. I'm going to pay the mortgage on this. You're going to rent these. There's 2 bedrooms on the other side and another bedroom in my place. You rent them out for as much or as little as you want. You collect the rent. If there's some major appliance problem, I'll take care of it. Otherwise, whatever money you get, that's the money that you're using to pay for college. And so because I did that for 7 years, okay, I never got to live in my fraternity house or in a dorm. This is where I lived for 7 years that I was in undergrad and law school. When I came out to Denver, I bought a duplex over in the Sloan's Lake area, paid $103,000 for it, rented out the other side. Interest rates were greater than what we're facing now. But, and so I only needed to come up with about $125 if I counted the rent I was getting from my next door to be able to make the rest of the mortgage payment. And so I did that, and I lived on $375 a month and spent truly, this is no joke, ate lunch every day in the Target cafeteria at the Target that over in Glendale that was near the executive suite that we rented. And so for the 6 months after I left, that's what I did. And that's how we got this firm started.
And what makes me smile with that is after I saw that commercial and I kind of knew this story, I'm thinking, if only people knew. Now they know, right? Because everybody, number one, you see lawyer, everybody already thinks you're dripping wet in money. Then they see you on everything, everywhere. They think you're dripping in money. And, a lot of times we don't see the human side and what you actually had to go through to do it. I actually, after you told me that, I went home and I told my wife, I'm like, you know what? I like this guy a lot now because everybody loves the Rocky story, and you certainly have it there. We talk a little bit about Florida. Florida is going to become kind of important in this. And so you grew up in Florida, and then you came to Denver not knowing anyone, right? Your dad was like, wait a minute, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I had just spent, like I said, 7 years at the University of Florida, made a lot of connections. I passed the Florida bar. I only knew Florida. I'd only ever lived in Florida. And, I just felt this, that I was going to be trapped trapped. Florida's a great state, but I felt like if I didn't try before I had a family, before I really settled down, when was I ever going to try something else? But I had promised myself, and I think I told you this too. When I went to take the Florida bar, and I was one of these students, I could kind of call it like I see it. There's a lot of like lying students that'll tell you, no, I failed that. And you see they made an A the next day. If I told you I made a B on something, I probably made a B. Well, after the bar exam's a 2-day exam, and they do it in Tampa, Florida for the whole state. And I sat for that bar, and after day one, I knew I had failed that examination. I remember calling my mom. I was like, I can't believe I went to 7 years of college. I just failed the bar. And that night, this is no joke, that night, I swore to God, I said, if I can pass this exam, I will never take another exam as long as I live. Just let me pass this exam. And so I sat for the second day of that thing. And this was back in the time where you had to run out to the mailbox, to get your results. And so the time period when the results, and they shipped them all from Tallahassee, Florida. And so the further you're away from Tallahassee, and so you start getting news that these things are coming. And I had a job at the time where literally they told me at this firm that I was working for, if you fail the bar, you don't have a job. And so I didn't tell them about my premonition of having failed it. So I get there and I passed the bar. And not only that, I actually did very well on the bar exam, but I passed the bar. But anyway, the reason that's important to the story of coming to Denver is that when I decided I was going to try to go to a different state, I said, you promised yourself you weren't going to take any more exams, and you're not going to. So what states can you go to that will take reciprocity with your Florida license that has a sizable city? And it really was down to Philadelphia, DC, or Denver. And I had not spent any time other than coming out to Colorado skiing with my family a couple of times growing up. I didn't know a single person in Denver. And yet I came out, I visited it at that time. I visited all 3 locations with my girlfriend at the time, made a decision it was going to be Denver, and moved to Denver without knowing a person. I think I told you I went down to the local library and pulled the yellow pages off of microfiche to find an apartment finder location, and I moved out here sight unseen. And yes, when I was driving across that Florida-Georgia line, I was like, what in the hell am I doing? Everything that I know is in the rear view mirror, that was real.
Hey, you promised God, man. You had to go somewhere where you didn't have to take another test. That is such an incredible story. And then, we take it from kind of this, $13,000, $12,000 investment. I'm not going to embarrass you, but I'm assuming you're making more than $500 a month right now. You've turned into this mecca, unbelievably large and successful practice. Everything in life is going good. I'm imagining. Can pretty much afford to do what you want to do, go to places you want to go to. Life can't get any better, and you get a call.
Yep. You're right. I mean, married, got 3 kids. Everything's going terrifically. I will tell you that as a personal injury lawyer representing families of catastrophic injury or death cases, doing this work and doing the work in the back of your mind, you think, man, I hope I know the randomness. I hope I'm never on the other end of that call, that knock on the door that you hear about from families. And unfortunately, on April the 28th of 2020, so just 2 years and a week or two ago now, and you go back in your mind to think about what was happening in our lives in April of 2020. The pandemic had just begun. We really didn't know anything about it. And my mom was killed while out on a COVID walk on April the 28th of 2020 in Winter Park, Florida, which is, for those who don't know where that is, it's really Orlando. It's kind of like Glendale is to Denver, which is kind of a surrounded area. It's a small town that is just north of Orlando, maybe the very first suburb of Orlando. And my mom lived off of a lake there in a beautiful townhome, very, very active woman, kind of the matriarch of our family. And, my sister is a physician down there, and she would watch my sister's kids after school. But here was this COVID thing that we didn't really know what is it. There's no vaccine. Her doctor said, just kind of stay away from the grandkids, but go out. You can certainly do your exercise, do what you want. And my mom had just 2 days before she was killed, had gone out on a walk and walked 10 miles. She was walking across the street 5 blocks from her house. And of all things, it was all caught on tape, on video. There happened to be actually a lawyer who was first in line at the light, who had a Garmin camera in his car. And so she went up, and I've never watched the video, but I've been told, she went up and she hit the walk sign, waited for it to turn to walk, was 9 steps across with her, and her back, as she's crossing the street, and a concrete mixer truck took a wide right-hand turn and ran over and killed my mom with a 43,000-pound concrete truck in broad daylight on a beautiful sunny afternoon at 5:15 p.m. Like I said, 5 blocks from her home. Our family didn't learn about it for about 5 hours afterwards, which is about 10 o'clock at night. I got a call. My sister said that the Winter Park Police Department had just left her house. My sister didn't live in Winter Park. She lived in another suburb of Orlando to the north. And so I knew immediately, because first of all, it was 8 o'clock at night. I had just finished a workout in the basement. I was eating a barbecue sandwich, ruining that workout for sure. And I saw my sister was calling me on my cell phone, and I knew it was 10 o'clock where she was. I know she gets up to work early. And I picked it up. And when she said Winter Park Police just left the house, and I knew she didn't live there, and I knew my mom did, I said, is it Mom? And she said, yes. And she wasn't saying I'm rushing out to go to the hospital or, everything's okay. I just immediately said, is she dead? And my sister said, yes. And that, started, that moment in time changed our entire family's life forever.
And you really write about it a lot in the book Unthinkable. We're going to show this a few times, but this is your book, Unthinkable. Very well written, incredibly good book, actually. I want to touch a little bit on the idea that you've represented these people before, and we talked a little bit about it. And no doubt that you care about them, you care about that, but you always are saying, hey, what are the statistics? It'll probably never hit my door. It did hit your door. Did it change you much? I mean, I know that you care, and I know that you want to get the best for the client and anybody in there, but how did it change you? It had to have changed you some.
Well, I will tell you that it changed me in enormous ways. You're right. I mean, again, I spent at that time almost 30 years representing families that were in the same position that I had now found myself. And what I realized through the experience was, here as a lawyer, I was focused in dealing with these families and helping them on, what can we do in terms of a civil case to gain accountability. But what was lost on me was all of the other kind of holistic needs and things that were coming out of family when you're told something like this. I mean, my mom went out on a walk. She expected to come back home. So her house is kind of like frozen in time, right? She didn't expect to be killed, and we didn't expect her to be killed. And immediately, starting with, what do you do with the pets that are at her house? What do you need to do with the car? What do you have to do with, is there a will? Where do you look for a will? what do you do? The police are calling us and they're wanting to talk with us. All of this stuff. And I can tell you in my life, there's never been a time in my life when I was least capable of making really difficult or important decisions than within the immediate aftermath of my mom being killed. Yet there's a lot of important decisions that have to be made in that time frame. Now, thankfully for me, I had Darren, my law partner, who called me. I had spoken with them, within a few minutes of finding out the news. But he called me the next morning and he said, Kyle, I know this isn't the time to be thinking about this. I just want you to give me the green light. Let me go and have people find out what happened to your mom, and take some action to protect the evidence. If you just say that that's okay. And I said, yeah, that's okay. Well, I will tell you what's interesting is that my mom had been killed. I didn't even think until he asked me that. It was not even on my mind because I was in shock. You truly, when you get that sort of information, you literally are trying to make it through the next minute, right? Then the next 5 minutes, the next hour, the next, and so you are literally, after my mom was killed, I walked upstairs. I wasn't crying. I walked upstairs and informed my wife, who was up there folding laundry, and my kids were in their rooms upstairs. And I walked up and I just said, I just got off the phone with my sister, and my mom was killed tonight while out on a walk. And she looked at me like, and immediately burst in tears. And then the kids come out of their rooms because they hear their mom crying. And, I was not in any position to make any decisions. And so thank goodness that Darren did that, because, we learned, the investigation after something like this, it's really important to find out what happened. And what we learned is that, of course, my mom was dead. She couldn't call and tell us. She couldn't explain what had happened. But the truck driver who ran over and killed my mom knew something big had just happened, right? He knew he had just killed somebody. He ran over her. She was dead instantly. And so he calls to his management, like he should, his safety manager. They're on the scene within an hour, trying to discover evidence, talk to witnesses, and prepare what would ultimately be their defense. They're out there doing that. My family doesn't even know yet. We're not even told it's happened yet. And so just from the very beginning, seeing the path that families really have to travel, it really changed my view on what representing these families is really truly about.
You made a statement in your book that said, I'll paraphrase it, but it was saying, you really truly don't understand it until it happens to you. I do believe 100% with every fiber in me, when you've been through it, you become so more empathetic than anyone can ever imagine, because you see the sequela that comes on after the fact. And it's a tough situation, man. I'm terrible at it, to be honest with you. I've done free care after the case because I just felt like, man, they needed more care, that there just wasn't enough coverage. And it changes you. It changes you as a human being. It changes kind of every fiber about you. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a great change. Tell me, though, in your case, why'd you write the book Unthinkable?
It's interesting. I know, obviously, doing what I do, I know a lot of medical professionals. And a medical professional actually reached out, as a really close friend of our family. She's a psychiatrist, and she doesn't do grief counseling, but she reached out in the days after my mom was killed and said, I'm going to bring over this book. And it's a book called It's Okay, You're Not Okay. And it is actually written by a woman who is a therapist, but not a grief therapist. And she had her husband, one day they, I guess, were out swimming in a river, and her husband, who was apparently in really good health, just drowned. And that changed her life. And here she had been a regular therapist, not a grief therapist. And she started realizing what somebody in grief needs. And so she switched her entire career to becoming a grief therapist. And she wrote a book that is a very straightforward book, but she did a very it was very helpful because I felt like she came to me. The read comes with so much credibility because she'd been through it and she understood what it felt like to have a traumatic loss and what people would be going through. And I found it to be very helpful to me. Well, when my fog started clearing a little bit after my mom was killed, I hearkened back to my sister asking me a question in the days after. My sister's a very smart woman, and she said, Kyle, how many years is this guy going to go to jail who killed mom? I mean, he killed mom in broad daylight with a commercial truck. He's a commercial driver. He's going to go to jail for a long time, right? And my answer to that's not a good answer for my sister because, in the criminal justice system, if you act intentionally, you go out and murder somebody intentionally, you're going to jail for a long time. You rape somebody, you're going to jail for a long time. If you're just negligent, as lawyers, we call it mens rea. It's kind of like the mental state of culpability. If you're just negligent, you might not spend any time in jail for killing somebody if it's an accident, right? And so what I recognized is, and my sister had told me, she said, I tried to look this up. And Kyle, every time I tried to look up about what happens after a death to somebody like this, she said some damn lawyer ad would pop up and it would, acting like I won the lottery saying, congratulations, somebody in your family's been killed. Call me and I'm going to fill your pockets with money. And she's like, that's not at all what I needed. And so I thought to myself, you know what? My sister's right. In fact, after that, not immediately afterwards, but I went and looked at, what did our marketing look like in the wrongful death setting in Denver, Colorado? And I saw we were kind of doing the same thing, and so it's a long answer to a short question, but the reality is the culmination of my exposure to what Megan Devine had done in her book, It's Okay, You're Not Okay. And what I was experiencing with my own family, I said, you know what? The kind of information that families need is not available. I looked on Amazon. I looked for some resource I, as a lawyer, had never seen or heard of such a resource. And so I said, who's in a better position? I know the law because I'm a lawyer and I'm in this field of practice. And I now know what people are going to go through. And so it gave me the idea to really follow in Megan Devine's footsteps, so to speak, and to write a book that says, chronologically, here are the things that you are very likely to have to face if you're ever confronted with this circumstance. And I tried to use kind of the order in which they arise and to address the issues that my family faced. And then I broadened that by asking lawyers in my office and other lawyers that I know and probate lawyers and other lawyers to make sure that as I was putting the book together, that I wasn't just limited to my own experience, but to the bigger questions that come up in these various other types of areas of the law. And that was the impetus for writing it. And I really, one other piece of it, which is, and you see it all the time, when something like this happens, especially if you like to take control and fix stuff.
Hang on 1 second. Let me ask you this. Are you getting ready to use the word therapeutic for you?
Yeah.
I felt that in your book.
Yeah.
When I read it, I felt the therapeutic benefit in your writing.
I'm a fixer, doing this and doing what you do for a living. You're a fixer too. You see a problem, let's fix it. You know what? I'll work as hard as we need to, but we'll get it fixed. It's all going to be okay. What do you do when something is so horrible, it cannot be fixed? And it can't be fixed. When somebody made a decision to take a right-hand turn and kill my mom, that's a forever consequence. It's unfixable. But in your mind, you still want to fix it. You want to fix something. And so I think that's why we see so many times after tragedy that people are drawn to making legislative changes or creating trust funds or doing things to benefit others in the name of somebody that they've lost. And we see it. You see it all the time. I think it's because they want some control over what is uncontrollable. And writing this book gave me a sense of control over a process that I was experiencing. And it's really, I mean, it took me about a year to write the book. I started writing it probably about 4.5, 5 months after my mom was killed. Some of the items in the book are almost written in real time to when we were experiencing them. Not some of the earlier stuff, but later, certainly in real time. And it was a very therapeutic experience. I was going to counseling and still go to grief counseling, but this book really helped me through. And really, when I was talking to publishers, I said, if one family benefits and it makes their path of travel easier or less complicated in some way, it's a success.
And it truly is. I mean, you help so many people in times of need, either an accident or wrongful death, any of that kind of stuff. And I always say the greatest expert in the world is the guy that's already been through it, or the woman that's already been through it, right? And so when I was reading it, I just kept stumbling all over the therapeutics in the book, which I'm kind of a sappy crybaby type of guy anyway. And so I think probably I do look for that. I may look at the book differently if I'm in the actual situation myself. And I do think that would probably be maybe more where people might go psychologically first. But man, I just felt your therapeutics, and I thought that was absolutely wonderful. That was fantastic, if you ask me. But one of the things that I definitely want to do, and this is you did not pay me to come on the show. I didn't pay you to come on this show. The reason I do stuff like this is we want to have the same philosophy at Truth Talks as you just said. We want to help somebody in a terrible situation get through it, and get through it as best as you can possibly get through it, and come out on the other side as good or maybe even better person than you were. So I'm going to give you a shameless plug for all of our listeners. If you're involved in a wrongful death lawsuit or a wrongful death situation, I am 100% in belief that you would serve that purpose so much better than anyone else, just having gone through it yourself.
Well, I appreciate it. And I will tell you that, there is a strange gift that was given to me out of this experience. And that is, I think my team, including myself, here, we're doing a much better, a more holistic job. I will tell you, we represent a lot of families in this situation. And I was talking to one of my paralegals just earlier today, and she was, working with a family to work with a real estate agent to list a home. Okay. Well, we're not real estate lawyers. Why is she helping the family? Because a family needs to list, they lost a relative and they need to list a home, and it's very difficult for them. And, that's what she's doing today. That sort of, really just this really holistic, we've helped families since this happened to my mother, things that we didn't do before. We've helped families go over and we help them sort through things, at a house. We've planned funerals. We've made sure that they have access to victims' compensation funds so that they can pay for funerals. This sort of thing was not what I was doing as a lawyer. And it really is, it reminded me of the counselor at law. And I took a what they said was kind of a blow-off course my last semester of law school, and it was called Lawyer as the Counselor. And I took it because people before me had said, hey, take this course. You really don't have to learn any new law at all. And I was like, that sounds great to me. I don't learn any new law. And the entire premise of this class was, we're going to give you a legal scenario, and we're going to give you the background of two different families, okay, with the exact same legal problem. And based upon what you read about what they're going through and what they need, how would you advise family A and how would you advise family B? And really, this experience brings me back to that instead of me saying, I'm hired as an assassin to go and crush it on behalf of somebody in this little piece of their life, the civil case, we're taking on these families and saying, what can we do to get you through the first 6 months after somebody has been killed? And there will be a time, and I am going to go out and be a mercenary and find out all the answers and fight like hell to make sure that you get the accountability that you need. But let's get you through this time frame together. And that might mean working with a probate lawyer. It might be working, like I said, with a funeral home or a victim's advocate or the police department, or sitting with them through the criminal trial when we're not there for the criminal case. That's the state and that's a prosecutor. So that's what's changed about what we're doing. And I owe that. Unfortunately, my mom is dead to teach me that lesson, but I'm a different person and a different lawyer. And I think am doing a better job.
I mean, everything has a purpose. And I think a lot of times matter of fact, that might've been the best law class anyone can take, right? That kind of goes across the whole gamut of everything that happens when you're in a law type of situation. But I know that line in the book, it made perfectly sense to me, right? You just didn't understand it till it happened to you. And I tell you, I know we had a conversation. I know you love your mom as much as I love my mom, and you said no one has to remind you every day. It happens. You recall it. You're really handling it with dignity, and of course making those changes for people who are in a similar type of situation is just absolutely phenomenal. So again, I encourage if you're in that situation, Kyle Bachus is who I would call definitely for that situation. I want to thank you for coming on our show. You're a hard man to get a hold of, by the way. That's a lot of people you got to go through, and I don't like that. I took offense to that to a certain degree till I got your cell. I enjoyed our conversation down at the game. I enjoyed, obviously, this podcast today, but you're a genuine guy. No matter how many billboards you have on, you are genuine as it gets. I thank you for coming on and sharing a difficult situation.
Well, listen, I so much appreciate the opportunity. As we discussed, you're not paying me and I'm not paying you. I'm literally doing this. And some people have asked me, why do you write this book and tell people you may or may not need a lawyer, and here's all the ways that you can do this, and here's the information, and because my goal is to get this out to families. And I'll leave you with this. The end of the book ends with kind of the legacy, right? And that is, this book is in part my legacy to my mother, but it's something I'm sure we all think about. But maybe we should just think about it more clearly for a moment. And that is, none of us know when our last day on earth is. None of us know when something might happen to somebody that we love. And especially when you think about the world today, and kind of politically fractured, and even really, fractured in terms of what's happening in Eastern Europe right now. It's really important to kind of walk lightly. You never know what other people are going through when you meet them. You don't know when you see somebody in a gas station or a grocery store, what's happening in their family. I wasn't wearing, and none of my clients ever don't wear and say, my mom was killed yesterday, but you're still out there. And so I think that as a legacy to all of the families that have experienced it, the one thing I would say is, like, practice kindness, walk more lightly through the world, and really enjoy your family, and be nice to people. We could use a lot more kindness in the world, and we're here for such a short time. And so I'll leave you with that.
Kyle, that's extremely well said. I want to show it again. Unthinkable. Get this book. And you know what kind of gets interesting sometimes when we do these, this book isn't actually just for people who have had this situation. It's also for the neighbor who's going through it, for a friend that's going through it. You don't have to have it happen to get the book. And sometimes I think it's good to read books about maybe loved ones that neighbor, somebody that's been going through it, to get a little bit better understanding. So this book is for everyone. And again, very well written. I don't know if you had a ghostwriter or not, but it was very well written. And again, the therapeutic part of it was absolutely my favorite.
Well, I really appreciate it. I had what we would call a writing coach that really helped frame some things. Lawyers have a tendency to maybe over talk, and they wanted it to be clear, concise, and so there was a lot of help at the publishers. They did a great job. It's an honor to have worked with them. And again, I just truly appreciate the opportunity to be here today to get the message out. And it's available everywhere. I mean, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. It's a bestseller in the personal injury law category on Amazon and has been for the last 2.5 months. And so we're really thrilled about getting it into the hands of so many people.
Well, we're going to certainly promote it. We're going to push this all out on all of our listeners and all of our social media. Kyle Bachus with Bachus and Schanker. You're doing great work, my friend. Appreciate you coming on our show.
Appreciate very much the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, brother.